Kia ora and welcome. I'm Shannon Jefferies and welcome to my first podcast of 360 Degrees of Health. And this podcast is aimed around just chats and thoughts on living your most abundant life, all things health, spirituality, healing and yoga. These are all things I'm really passionate about, all things that have come into my life through being an unwell young person. And today I just want to introduce myself and my story so that you can know where I'm coming from and whereabouts in my journey I'm at. And today it's about what compelled me to lead my best life at such a young age. So what keeps me on track, motivated and inspired even after multiple setbacks. I'm very passionate about sharing my story because I feel like, there's nothing special about me. It's all just a story and every one of us has a story. But if anyone can achieve health after, I've been through what I've been through and where I'm at now, I feel like anyone can. And it's just about finding a starting place and just noticing what you notice about yourself and going forward from there. So just to start at the beginning, I was a very unwell child, and if you talk to my family, they probably noticed that I picked up things easily in early childhood and took a long time to recover. I was one of those kids that probably slept a little more than most and didn't have the energy that was disposable to a lot of children. It got worse as I came of age and was a teenager, and so it led to a series of health events, a series of medical investigations, quite a few dead ends, which led to frustration for not only myself but my family. So probably a familiar story for many people, so I'll just share that with you now. So it all started for me as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. Started to become very lethargic and fatigued. If I went out horse riding, I very much love for animals and all things outdoors. And we noticed that if I did go outside and I spent the weekend riding my horse or competing my horse, that I'd come back and I'd literally spend a couple of days, have to take a few days off school, sometimes with very puffy face, sometimes struggling to breathe. I always had a very disrupted digestive system, abdominal pain, reflux as a teenager, and vomiting for no reason. Very much excruciating pain through the lower abdomen for no reason for a very extended amount of time. So dealing to live in pain became normal for me at quite a young age. That's led to me to be hospitalised for, weeks on end sometimes with no proper diagnosis, often put on medication just as an experiment. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. Many of the things that did work, it was something I wasn't able to be on long term, which was also very heartbreaking and frustrating at the same time. So definitely felt as a young person, as a teenager, that I was being held back and was living a very half life. Never really finding my full potential at high school with my friends or in extracurricular activities. I had a want to be involved in so much more. But finding every time I just, hit my stride or found something that I loved would often be a little bit too much and I couldn't get in a balance. So, when I was roughly about 13, I had, from my abdominal pain that I would experience, I had my appendix out and had a bit of a long hospital stay there. Never recovered from that surgery and had increased stomach pain. My poor mother kept taking me back to the specialist and the doctor and felt like she was banging her head against the wall as she looked for answers for me, often being made to feel like that her and I were both hypochondriacs because of the fact that we couldn't get an answer from the doctors. I was questioned to have anorexia, bulimia, mental health issues because they could never pinpoint what was actually going on for me, even though I was showing up in pain at the doctor's surgery. So all those things, do affect you when you've been told that the doctors don't even believe that you have symptoms. And for my mum, who, totally backed her daughter, totally knew me and said, she's not well, I can see it. So after quite a few months of in and out of hospital, dead ends, being questioned about our mental health, I did have a very serious medical event where I sort of inexplicably collapsed at school. I got brought into the doctor's surgery in more pain than I'd ever experienced in my abdomen, and just I literally couldn't walk. And at this stage, my right side of my reproductive system, my fallopian tube, had gone into sepsis and blood poisoned me. And I actually had a near-death experience in the doctor's surgery, which I'll talk about in great depth going forward because it was a real turning point for me. Made me realise that there's more than we can see. The experience for me was very spiritual. But just to keep this journey story short, we'll just glaze over that for now. And in the end, so I ended up getting put into hospital, operated in, having my right side of my reproductive system removed, the fallopian tube removed. Actually, to this day, there's been no real explanation to what happened with that. And I was in hospital for quite some time afterwards, recovering. And at the same time, had part of my breast removed because coincidentally, I don't believe in coincidences, I had a lump removed from my right side of my breast that left a huge hole in my breast and had to be packed and dressed for a very long time after my surgery. So that was a real turning point for me because I ended up in the medical system. Ended up with part of my body being removed, which is quite confronting for a 13-year-old, and then the recovery that comes from that. After all of that happened and I was recovered from the surgery and set back out into the world, still never really recovering. So my parents still left with their 13-year-old daughter, not of full health, still experiencing a number of symptoms that weren't acceptable for full life. Being told that maybe that was just my new reality and thinking, oh my gosh, there's got to be more to life than this. So, that went on for years. In and out of hospital, again, not fulfilling a full life until my mum and my dad and the help of my extended family over in Sydney just went, enough's enough. We need to get more answers. So I actually went and was very fortunate enough to be put in a position through help of family to go and stay in St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney and have more exploratory medical exploration to try and get an answer to why I just wasn't well. And so while I was in Australia, they thought I had a brain tumour. So we went through some brain scans and had a brain tumour show up on one of the scans for some reason. And do you know what? To have a diagnosis, as grim as it sounds, I was so excited. So from years of unexplained medical mysteries to be told what you'd think would be your worst nightmare, that you had a brain tumour and you're going to require surgery, I was actually ecstatic. So that's how down I was about my life prognosis, is just to have an answer was actually a relief. Turns out after further exploration, I didn't have a brain tumour, but during that time, the doctors had found that I had a condition called lupus. Systemic lupus erythematosus is the full term. And so even though it wasn't going to be a surgery and it wasn't as bad news as a brain tumour, it's a chronic illness that I would have to manage for the rest of my life, I was still fairly rapt to have a diagnosis. So I know there'll be many people listening that goes, oh, I totally get that. The unknown, the undiagnosed, the continual feeling that you're just not quite in a place of balance and harmony in your body is an extremely difficult place to live from. So I totally get that experience that people go through. After I was diagnosed with lupus, then there's a treatment plan put in place, which is a relief, but also comes with its own territory. So lupus is a condition, an autoimmune condition. It's related to a lot of other conditions that sound similar. So you might have heard of other diseases that sound very similar. My white blood cells produce too much. So instead of attacking viruses and bacteria that come into the body, lupus attacks my own natural tissue. So I can literally be eating myself, basically. It means that it's triggered by stress. It's triggered by not managing my energy properly. It's triggered by not eating properly. It's triggered from being out in the sun too long. So the UV light can trigger my blood cells. And the journey that I've been on and getting to know myself has been knowing what flares this disease for me. I got to the point that I was really medicated to keep myself balanced in the medical system a lot. I probably was experiencing side effects from the medication that started becoming as big as the symptoms of my disease. So that was something we were having to balance. As I got a little bit older and having the ending of my years at college and starting to think of what my life's going to look like as an adult, it was actually really grim. So I lived at home with my parents. They're lovely. I had a wonderful childhood story and a fabulous supportive family. But as a young adult, the thought of living with your parents for the rest of your life because you're not going to be able to work or get off medication or fulfill the dream of having my own family and was actually something that looked really real for me. Having lost half of my reproductive system meant that I wasn't able to have my menstrual cycle at that stage and didn't look like I'd be able to have a family. So I fell into a little bit of a bad headspace. I wouldn't say depression, although at times it escalated to anxiety and feeling quite low. My life expectancy looked not fabulous. And I probably got into what I would call say a victim mentality. So being looked after by the family, being considered the weak one of the pack by all my friends and my family became my reality. The first question anyone asked when they came around was, "Oh, how's Shannon?" With that sympathy in their voice. And as a young person, that wasn't a good feeling. And so this is where I came to realize that I could either indulge in being the victim, being the sick person, being the weak one that everyone had to look after, or whether I could explore an alternate reality. At this stage, one of my wonderful family members, my Auntie Pam, she handed me a cassette tape. Yes, it was back in the days when it was Walkman and cassettes. She could see that my mental health was suffering, and she could also see that my spiritual health was suffering from constant medication, hospitalisation, and the feeling that I was getting left behind by my peers as they went and embarked on their young adulthood. And so she turned up at my bedside with some amethyst crystals and a cassette tape of Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And as I listened to the tape, probably somewhat half-heartedly, because I hadn't bought into the philosophy at the stage, I started thinking about that near-death experience that I had at a very young age, because I saw and felt and experienced things during that time that were inexplicable medically and opened the reality to other things in this world that maybe I just hadn't thought about. And remembering I'm at a pretty low point in my life, so what have I got to lose? Let's just try everything. So at this point was my turning point when I went, okay, maybe what I see and I hear medically and in the very physical realm, in the very black and white world that we get shown, that maybe I'm missing the extra piece of the puzzle that can give me the freedom to be what I want to be in life. So this is what I'd call my turning point. All of these points I'm going to flesh out in later podcasts because they're all their own topic within themselves. But it was from this point that I went, okay, I'm no longer the victim. There's a turning point. I can be everything I want to be. I have the tools within myself to heal. I have the tools within myself to be whole and complete. There's a mindset about health. There's an energy about health. And there's something that we vibrate. There's a frequency. There's a feeling about health that's more than the pills we put in our body, more than the blood tests that we have, more than maybe what a medical doctor might be able to see for black and white. Now, I'm not bagging medication. I'm not bagging medical help. They're all tools to 360 degrees of health. They're all things I've used and still use with myself and my family, in addition to everything else I'm going to talk about on this podcast. So I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to have a huge depth of knowledge in the medical field, even though I'm a trained nurse. But it's about using all of the tools that we have at our disposal to find full health. So now where I'm at is that it took years of trial and error to find the sweet spot for me, to find true health, to find true vibration, to try and find the full vibrancy of my life. Skipping forward so that we don't keep ourselves here too long. I run and own a yoga business. I am of full health. I am on no medication at all. I have 4 beautiful, healthy children that I've had naturally. I manage any pain and flares of my condition naturally and through the 360 degrees of health. And I have a wonderful partner and home and energy to burn. So welcome to my podcast. Welcome to my journey and how I share the story. But it's not just about me, because I know each and every one of you have a story. Each and every one of us have a health that we have to balance and maintain, and a lifestyle we have to balance and maintain to access the energy and healing our bodies have. And this is about different ways, each and every podcast are different ways that we can change our mindset, change our nutrition, change our vibration, move our bodies in a way that fully give us our full life, energy, and what we need from our life. So I look forward to coming back and talking about all those different aspects that help us find those energies for ourselves, whether it's through the yoga, through nutrition, through spirituality. And we'll have some guest speakers and talk to other people and how they've found their true health and their full life. And I look forward to having you as part of that journey. So namaste, team. Thank you very much.